Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Singular Research's Spring Select webinar. We have a great number of companies presenting today, and to start it off, we have Power Metallic Mines with CEO Terry Lynch. We will also be uploading the company's quarterly updates and initiation reports in the handouts section, so please check that out there and download those reports there. So stay tuned for those reports. Every 30 minutes, we'll have a new company coming on for presenting. So Terry, please take it away.
Okay, thanks for having us. I look forward to updating your audience about Power Metallic. So last year in Canada, we were the top performing mining stock, and we've got every reason to believe that we'll be even better this year. So why would that be? Let's learn about that in this presentation. We're not going to tell you anything we don't believe is true, but as always with investing, please do your own due diligence. Let's start with the investment highlights. So the reason why our stock took off last year was we made a major polymetallic discovery, and it's a high-grade copper, nickel, PGE, gold, and silver. It sounds like a real mouthful, but these are fairly rare. Maybe 20 in the history of the world. We found one of them, and they're all either sort of giants or super giants. We'll get into much more detail of that in the presentation. We've been very fortunate to find it in a tremendous location in Quebec, in Canada, which is literally maybe the best place in the world to make a critical mineral discovery. Great relationships with the First Nations and a lot of fiscal incentives. We'll talk more about that as well. We're fully funded. Again, we raised about $50 million just at the end of February. We'll talk to you about that. And significantly, we raised the money from pretty much the smartest people in mining. Robert Friedland and Rob McEwen, Gina Reinhardt, these are all legends in the game, and several mining funds. The reason why they invested is that in addition to having just great ground, we've also got great minds working the great ground. So Dr. Steve Beresford is probably considered, if he's not the greatest polymetallic scientist in the world, he's certainly in that conversation. He formerly was chief geo at First Quantum, MMG, and IGO, several multi-billion-dollar successful mining firms. And we're growing. So with this capital that we've just added, we're going from 3 rigs to 6. So this is going to become a very newsy story, and that's why we're expecting to have a sparkling 2025 following our great year last year. Let's give you a little snapshot on the company. So listed in Canada, we're exploring uplisting in the United States right now. Look for that coming soon. Currently on the OTC BB, but that'll probably change in the next couple of months. We've got about 220 million shares outstanding, 275 fully diluted. Significantly, the top 7 or 8 shareholders own 50% of the company, and they've all been the biggest investors in the last 2 years. I think that's a really compelling point because you want your big investors to be continuing to write checks because that means they still believe in the value the company offers, and we certainly have had that in spades from our shareholders. It's a tremendous time to be looking at commodities in general. This is the ratio of commodities to the Dow, so that obviously the Dow and the big techs have been dominant, and so commodities are trading at or near an all-time low. But that's likely to change, especially in the Fortress America outlook of the Trump administration. They're very, very keen on tying up their critical mineral supplies, and I suspect commodities are going to shine. So it may be a great time to be looking at commodity investments, and certainly would think Power Metallic would be a very wise part of that portfolio. Let's dive into the details of the project itself. It started off as a nickel company. We used to be called Power Nickel because we were initially just looking for nickel sulfides. We had bought a nickel sulfide project that had an historic resource of 3.1 million tons of 1.5% nickel. We've grown that to a 43-1 of over 7 million tons, and it's probably somewhere in the 8.5 range right now. And then in looking for more nickel, we had stepped out 5.5 kilometers to the northeast and drilled this pod that looked prospective, very similar look to the NISK pod, and we call it the line zone, and we hit an amazing discovery there. Looking for nickel, we found massive copper. So this is a spectrum of some of our significant holes, averaging grade width of about 21 meters and a grade of almost 8% copper equivalent. This is historic stuff, folks. So this doesn't happen. This is like, that's $800 rock. That's super profitable rock. When you think about 1 gram of gold being a very good rock to get in a gold mine, that's $100 rock. So you can imagine how profitable $800 rock is. So that's why obviously our stock took off and people got very excited. So what's also exciting for people is whole asymmetry upside in this. So we've found a ton of great resources, and that's been important. We'll get into more detail on that. But the potential to find a lot more is what's really compelling. So this triangle here that we're looking at was developed by Dr. Steve Beresford, our now director in one of the top polymetallic mines in the world. So his only interest is to find these orthomagmatic nickel copper PG deposits. And when we initially had the nickel sulfide, that's what we thought we had. And then when we found the copper, we realized, wow, this is actually one of these very rare, the best mines you can possibly find on Earth are these orthomagmatic mines. So in history, the world's biggest mine, the most valuable mine in history of the world, is a mine. It's called Norilsk. It's in Russia. Oktyabrsky, which is in the center of the triangle there, is the core of that deposit. It's like a square kilometer that contains over $1 trillion of contained metal. It's amazing. Our project Lion has similar grades to Oktyabrsky, only not over a square kilometer, only the 20 meters, and hopefully it's spread over a few more kilometers. We'll see, but obviously it's very high grade. Other projects that you might recognize, Voisey's Bay, Sakatti. So all these projects are either major, i.e. contain 1 million contained tons of metal, or super major, which contains 10 million tons of contained metal. So what right now we've found is, analysts say we've found about, as January Henem Research had issued a report saying around 10 million tons of 7% copper equivalent. Then we had the 8 million tons or so of the nickel already. So call us in the 20 million ton range. Interesting enough, it's about right now 1.5 tons of copper to 1 of nickel. Historically, these discoveries, these orthomagmatic discoveries in the history of the world, they average for every ton of copper sulfide you'll find 5 tons of nickel sulfide. So right now, as I said, we're 1.5 or so to 1 on the copper to nickel, soon to be almost 2 to 1 copper to nickel, we think. So what does that mean? Well, in addition to finding a lot more copper, which is of course great, we're also likely to find a lot more nickel. So this thing is going to be big, because if you think we're at 20 million tons now, we're still only at less than 1 to 1, and they're going to get 5 times that. Gives you an idea how big this potentially could be, and I think that's what's proved attractive to investors. Let's talk about where we're at, how we're doing. So we've got some more drilling to come from our winter season. So one of the interesting things about how we're drilling in the Lion zone is when we drill, we use 6-inch pipe or so, and then when we get down and we obviously evacuate the core, we put a tool down the pipe, and it's called a borehole EM, and it gives us a flash and it allows us to identify sulfide bodies within 150-200 meters. So when you look at this screen, you see this blue triangle, blue sort of plate off to the left. Those are further zones that we'll begin testing, because they may contain, it looks like they contain sulfides, and then we'll see how productive they are. Are they super high grade? Are they low grade? Whatever. Generally speaking, we've been hitting on 50% of our drill holes, which is really, really high because of using this technology. Sometimes there's false positives, but so far we've been very lucky. No false positives. So it's been a very effective exploration technique for us. So we're advancing into this now. This is like on the left, you can see this whole span from NISK on the left up to Lion on the right. That's about 5.5 kilometers. We'll be laying off a span of holes this summer between NISK to Lion because we think they're connected subsurface. This would create a tremendous strike length, in addition to pursuing opportunities at depth. And there's a number of holes still to come in this reporting season. So we'd actually hope to have some out today, but assays not in yet, but will be expected this week. So I'd expect we'll get assays out next week, and we can look to have assay and assay reports every 2 or 3 weeks, pretty much for the next several months. Obviously, the stock had a good run. We were the top performing mining stock in Canada last year. And so people ask me, they say, well, Terry, have we missed it? It's gone up by $1. You should have bought it at 20 cents. It's $1.20 now or whatever. And I say, yeah, you missed the first $1, but you haven't missed the next 10. When people make a world-class discovery in mining, it's super rare, but when you get them, they're 30, 50, 100 baggers. So don't miss the next charge on the stock. I believe this is a world-class discovery, and we're still got a long ways to go. When we were out and we raised this $50 million in a very competitive mining market, these next 2 slides were why we were able to raise it. We're very cheaply priced relative to what we've already found when you look at our comparables in the marketplace. So when you look into what they've got in the ground and what we've got in the ground, 4N is a great company. They've done amazing things. About $1.5 billion or so market cap, roughly $250 rock in the ground. So our rock could probably be double that at least. And we think we'll probably have metal in the ground, very something similar to 4N by the end of September. We're well on our way to be getting there now. So that should be exciting for investors. It will ultimately cause a re-rating in the company, and that's why we're getting out doing shows like this and getting our word out to investors. It's also why we were able to raise that $50 million, because the smart money guys know that eventually good deposits or great deposits get paid. And so we've been led in the last couple of rounds by Robert Friedland and Rob McEwen, two of the Hall of Fame legends of mining, and many of the great mining funds. So the smart money in mining has been piling into Power Metallic, and that's why we're, and it's funny that last round was done. We were able to use some innovative Quebec financing that's available to us, which is one of the benefits of being in Quebec. So we did 80% of the round at $2.83 a share, 20% at $1.45. What happens to the guys that invested at $2.83 is they sell immediately to our back-end investors, the Robert Friedlands of the world, Rob McEwen's, the mining funds, for $1.45. So we get the money, shares in permanent hands day one, but the company was able to get a lot more cash because of some tax benefits. They were able, the Quebec-based investors were able to get tax credits and deductions. They reduced their tax burden from, say, 54% to 40%, and they're out. So that's their win. But the investors, they basically, they invested $1.45, but on average, we got $2.50 in cash in the company to de-risk their investment. So that's a really big plus for investors. So it's obviously helps our existing investors, less dilution, but even, for the new investor, he's got more cash working for him to de-risk his investment. So that's one of the real big edges for Quebec. One of the other edges for Quebec, in addition to exploration, is that if, when we go to development of this mine, if it costs us $400 million to develop it, $200 million of that would come in the form of tax credits that we could turn into cash from the federal and provincial governments. So literally half the price of developing this mine could come in the form of effectively grants. So that's amazing. The other reasons why we love Quebec is the infrastructure is largely established. So in this case, in mining, generally, if you don't have the infrastructure, you got to make it. And that comes out of the economics of the project. But in this case, we drive right off a major road, right to our site, right to our rigs. And then on the site is power already. So we didn't have to bring the roads or the power to the site. It's already there. We're located about 8 kilometers outside the town of Namaska. You can see on the right-hand corner of the Quebec map, that's the province of Quebec. That little square triangle is the one you see, the bigger one on the screen. So you can see we're just a little bit east of James Bay, where the power to power the eastern seaboard of the United States and Canada comes from. And this is also the home of the James Bay Cree, which is our Indigenous First Nations partner. They've been a tremendous group to work with. They basically very pro-mining friendly, very savvy, and done a great job in managing their assets. So we're looking forward to working with them. So we've got many of the things you want to have in a project is you have supportive community, great infrastructure, in a fiscally safe region with lots of great incentives. So that's what Quebec has got. Every good mining deal begins and ends literally with the great miners. So these are the scientists that actually find the rock that's valuable to process. You need somebody like myself and our team on the financing side to make sure these guys have the tools they need to be successful, but you need the top brains, so we've got them. So Steve Beresford, as we discussed, one of the top polymetallic mines in the game, a tremendous set of track records success at First Quantum and at MMG and IGO. So he's spent a lot of money drilling for polymetallics all over the world, so he knows the tricks of the trade. He was trained at Western Mining, so was Joe Campbell. That's why when Steve came over and saw the data, he said, well, this is the first time I've come to a spot that had the data set up the right way. So he was able to hit the ground running, and that's been great. And then Joe and Adam run a company called GeoVector, and GeoVector is one of the top geological consulting firms in the country, top 2 or 3, and it's got a lot of size to it. So we've been able to scale very rapidly for a small company. Been much more effective to go this route than to hire individuals, because we can sort of grow, like as we're going from now from 3 rigs to 6, we're able to do that, and we've got this top tier team that we otherwise couldn't afford. The metallurgy, often with polymetallics, that's an issue or a concern. Luckily, when you're in with really high grade, polymetallics like ours, it's not an issue. So, or we don't believe it will be an issue, and obviously we're going to prove it. But it's very much style-wise very similar to the Sudbury footwall deposits. So Sudbury had some great copper mines, which high-grade copper with PGs, platinum, palladium, gold, silver, and they were able to process those very, very well, effectively, getting like 90% recoveries. We're running right now, just to be conservative, with an 80% recovery rate. I asked Robert Friedland before he invested what he thought we'd get. He's obviously running some polymetallic mines in South Africa, and he said, look, we're getting high 80s, like 88% to 92% on our stuff. He says, I'm sure you'll get there with this. So that's good to know. In terms of the program going forward, this last summer and fall, and even in the winter, we did a lot of prep work in terms of the gravity and the EM surveys. And now we brought in some geophysicists to augment our geologists to sort of, obviously understand the borehole EM, but also understand the other technical details we've got. So we're really stoked about scaling from 3 rigs to 6, and we think we're going to have some very exciting exploration news coming shortly. And speaking of that, in terms of what's to come from the winter program, we got about another, I think, 14 holes to report. We had hoped to have that out today, but it just didn't come in time. So we'll be looking to get that out probably first of next week after your holiday, and then we'll probably have another set of assays out in mid-June, and then probably towards the end of June, and then probably it gaps a month until early August, because at that point we'll be reporting the summer drill program. So we've started gearing up at the site. We'll start drilling next week. 2 rigs will be deployed next week, and then 2 rigs every 2 weeks until we get 6 rigs up. So we're pretty stoked about what we've got to come. You can see that box on the bottom box, and you can look at that golden hue. That's a sign of a very rich intersection. So we got some exciting stuff coming. In addition to that, when we were just a nickel sulfide project, one of the things that we had done, we've been contacted by a company called CVMR. They're the largest private nickel refiner in the world, and they're doing a feasibility study right now and paying for it to produce a concentrate at NISK and turn that into nickel powder. So nickel powder is a very growing market, because its 3 primary uses are electric vehicles, 3D printing, and armaments. So whether rockets, bullets, missiles, etc., because it's a hardening agent. So you get between $40,000 to $60,000 a ton for nickel powder. The costs are nickel concentrate, which is around now about $15,700, and maybe $4,000 in processing. So a very lucrative part of the business. So we're looking forward to that. We had delayed that while we were pursuing the line zone, but now we're gearing back up on that. We expect to have some interesting news on that in H2. One of the good things we'll be able to do with this mine is we're going to be able to make it carbon neutral, we think. Generally, this is just because of great luck, really. We're right beside a green source of power. The hydropower, Hydro-Quebec, is obviously water powered, so that'll be able to easily power our installations. It's also an ultramafic deposit, so our ultramafic rock naturally sequesters CO2. And there's 3 ways to make nickel. You can make it by smelting, by hydrometallurgy, or the chemical metal vapor process, which is what the CVMR group does. So that's the lowest CO2 charge on the nickel, has no external air, no external water. So we think we'll be able to get to a carbon neutral mine. It won't be extremely costly, probably not any extra cost. We don't know it'll necessarily drive higher yields. It's possible it could. For sure, it's going to get us better offtake partners, and we certainly think that would be a plus. Some of the technology we use to advance ours that's, I think, relevant that not a lot of people are using. Ambient noise, it's a new thing. It's been out for 4 or 5 years. Fleet Space is Australia's fastest growing company. Rio Tinto spent, I think, over 24 million with them last year. It's really good for base metals and for uranium. So that little thing on the right-hand side is called a geode. They put a sound pulse down 2,000 meters into the earth, comes back as a sound map. They take that sound map and they basically, add sort of advanced AI programs that bring in your geophysics, your magnetics, your IP, your gravity, your geochemistry, all your drilling data, and they're able to get a very good 3D picture of your deposit subsurface, and they're able to identify basically the lithographic or the rock types just by measuring the what they call the speed of the rock. This is a new sort of breakthrough definition. We've used that to help us accelerate our drilling, and it's we're always as a smaller company trying to use technology to our advantage, and it's certainly been a plus for us. One of the last things that we'll talk about is we did spin off into a subsidiary called Chilean Mills that's going to be listed in July. We own half of it. Our shareholders, as of end of February, or I guess early February, own the other half, and we think that'll be a nice little kicker for us. We have had fleet down to Chile, and we've got some exciting investment targets down there in terms of drilling that we're sort of keen to get at. We felt it was best to have it in its own vehicle because it's an exploration stage, and we were getting no value for it inside of the current power metallic, because NISK is what everyone's focused on. The team itself is a very focused team, a lot of skin in the game. Our board, separate of me, has 4% of the company stock. Our chairman is ex-corporate lawyer. Greg McKenzie is a ex-investment banker and runs a mining company, Silver Storm. And Steve, obviously, is the geologist and less a successful businessman. So we talked about Joe, and Jimena runs our Chile operations, and Duncan runs IR. So very lean, very committed team. So that's pretty much it from the investment highlights. So at the end of the day, the reason why we had such a great 2024 was we found an amazing discovery, moved from a nickel sulfide to this giant polymetallic that's super rare, and it's in one of the best jurisdictions in the world. We're fully funded with literally legendary investors like Robert Freeland, Rob McEwen, Gina Reinhardt, 12 other billionaires. It's been a pretty impressive group of people that's bankrolled us, and it's bankrolling us because we've got the top talent in the world working on the project. So we're gearing up, got a lot of exciting news coming over the next, I would say 18 months, and it would be a tremendous time for you to be looking at power metallic as an investment. So with that, I'm going to go back to our host here and answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Terry. Well, great. So we've got a couple questions. So walk us through the summer drill program and how you think that should create value.
Yeah, so we're really stoked about the summer drill program. So we're going to focus on a couple of things. We're going to focus on advancing the line zone deeper and proving a bunch more tonnage of the high-grade copper there. So that'll be exciting, because that's an existing sort of mineralized area we know quite well. And then we've got a lot of leads, because of our advanced research that we've done with the magnetics and the IP and the borehole EM. So we think we can lay a really nice track record from Lion to NISK, and we'll see how much we can prove how connected this deposit could be. When we talked about the triangle slide of how we've got 1 ton of copper, you should find 5 tons of nickel, and right now we're already at 1.5 copper to 1 of nickel. So we think there's going to be, while we're finding a lot more copper, we're also going to find a boatload more nickel. And nickel is actually worth more than copper per ton, like 60% more. So it's only a 4-letter word if you're primarily just a nickel deposit. But if you're a super high grade, like we are, nickel is a phenomenal thing to add to the mix, and we're probably going to find a boatload more of it this summer. So I think it'll be a super exciting drill program, and we're looking forward to bringing that to our shareholders.
Great color there. So the stock is down since the financing. Is there anything we should know there?
You know what? I mean, basically, we got obviously hit the high wire on the financing, got it done at $1.45. I think the moving average at the time was $1.50, so it was really great. And as I said, we got 250 in the till, so it was great, great work by the team to get that done. Once it got done, about a week later, the tariff shenanigans started, and that terrified the market and led to a lot of very great uncertainty in the market. Almost everything dropped significantly, certainly in the mining space. We did too, and we felt in that environment it really didn't make a ton of sense to be out there marketing. A, we weren't trying to raise money. B, our story was not going to be heard because of the stress on the tariffs and all that meant. So as a result, when you don't bring in new investors, in our world, you have these shorts that continue to sort of pound out stock and just lower the price, lower the price, lower the price. So that sort of happened for a while, and now sort of now that we've sort of normalized, I think on the tariff situation a bit, you can get out and do shows like this, talk to investors. I'm on the road the last week, been talking to a lot of big mutual funds and pension funds and family offices, getting some good audiences. So I think it's a great time to get back out and retell a story. And what a great time to be looking at the story from an investor perspective, because they're getting in at 25, 30 cents less than the top mining guys that gave us $50 million. So it's it's a hell of a time to be looking. So we see it as a buy the dip situation from our perspective, and that's what we're advising people when we're on the road.
That sounds great. So we've got about 5 minutes left. How big, and this would be the last question, but how big could this discovery be? Can you give a better sense there?
I mean, this is this is always the $64,000 question, right? How big can it be? Oh, some of the clues that we look at is you look at that triangle that I referred back to a couple of times in the presentation. For every ton of copper sulfide you should find an average of 5 tons of nickel. So right now, arm waving analysts, someone would say maybe you're somewhere in the 10, 15, 20 million tons of copper. What you might find, maybe it goes to 30. So then you say at 5 times that, well, that's another 150 tons of nickel. That gets to be very big. Voisey's Bay, as an example, was bought, when they had like a 45 to 47 million tons of copper nickel, and now has 140 million tons. So could we have another one of those? I mean, it's entirely possible. I mean, obviously we have to prove it. You look at Sakatti, that's a very good analogy for us. That's like mid 40 million tons of material. We certainly see that as very, very doable for us. But honestly, we just don't know how big this can be. We've got a very large land package. We think this could be a very big world-class discovery, and and we've got the resources to go and do it, and we've got the people with it. We love what we're doing right now, and we think it's going to be one of the really great positions to be in over the next couple of years. Talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Terry. So that concludes the Power Metallic presentation. We've got about a 3-minute break, so we'll reconvene in about 3 minutes. So thanks for the presentation, and we'll talk soon.
Cheers.
Okay, so I guess